Before California belonged to one patch, it belonged to violence. 2 motorcycle clubs, 1 state, and a war so brutal it erased an identity. In the years following World War II, California was a proving ground. Veterans returned home restless, disillusioned, and searching for something that made sense after chaos. Motorcycles became freedom, brotherhood became survival, and biker clubs became tribes. But this wasn't a unified culture. It was fractured, volatile, and ruled by reputation. Territory wasn't inherited. It was defended. Among the most feared names on California roads were the Blue Angels Motorcycle Club. They didn't posture. They didn't negotiate. They enforced. At the same time, a younger, less refined group was beginning to take shape in Fontana, calling themselves the Hells Angels. At first, they were just another club. That would change, because California would not tolerate 2 powers forever. The Blue Angels, built for war, not legends. The Blue Angels MC emerged in the late 1940s, forged in a brutal era when biker clubs settled disputes face to face. Their philosophy was simple: strength through fear, loyalty through force. Membership was selective. Discipline was enforced internally. Weakness was not tolerated. They controlled territory in Southern California not by expansion, but by intimidation. Other clubs learned that crossing the Blue Angels carried consequences that arrived quickly and publicly. They didn't seek fame. They didn't seek national recognition. They sought control. For years, it worked. The Hells Angels, chaos learning to organize. Founded in 1948 in Fontana, the Hells Angels began as a loose association of riders, many of them veterans, bonded by rebellion more than structure. Early chapters were raw, disorganized, and unpredictable. But something separated the Angels from their rivals: ambition. As membership grew, so did coordination. Chapters began communicating. Leadership emerged. Rules formed. Violence became strategic rather than impulsive. The Hells Angels were no longer just surviving. They were learning how to win. First contact, when respect became a threat. The first clashes between the Blue Angels and the Hells Angels weren't planned wars. They were collisions, bars, road encounters, biker gatherings where neither side was willing to yield. In outlaw culture, respect is everything. And when both clubs demanded it, confrontation became inevitable. Disputes escalated quickly. What began as intimidation turned physical. What turned physical turned lethal. Once blood is spilled, there is no reset. Death enters the conflict. By the early 1960s, the rivalry had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Members from both clubs were killed in violent encounters linked to the feud. These deaths hardened positions. Retaliation became expected. Neutral ground vanished. Law enforcement began paying closer attention, but biker violence was still treated as a fringe problem until it wasn't. California's highways became hunting grounds. Every ride carried risk, the invisible advantage. On the surface, the Blue Angels looked dominant. They were feared, respected, and deeply entrenched in their territory. But beneath the surface, the Hells Angels were building something the Blue Angels lacked: scale. Multiple chapters coordinated actions. Intelligence was shared. Allies were leveraged. The Angels weren't just fighting, they were positioning. And position matters more than power. Open war, California on edge. As tensions peaked, the conflict became impossible to ignore. Clubhouses were attacked. Members traveled armed. Retaliation followed retaliation. For the Blue Angels, every confrontation drained resources. For the Hells Angels, every clash tested endurance. The violence reached a point where survival itself was in question. Law enforcement enters the picture. California authorities could no longer ignore the bloodshed. Surveillance increased. Arrests followed confrontations. Informants were cultivated, but enforcement pressure didn't end the war, it intensified the cost. Every move carried legal consequences. Every gathering risked exposure. Strategy versus ferocity. The Blue Angels fought with ferocity. The Hells Angels fought with strategy. One club relied on fear. The other relied on structure. And over time, structure wins. Isolation of the Blue Angels. As the war dragged on, the Blue Angels found themselves increasingly isolated. Allies hesitated. Neutral clubs avoided involvement. The Hells Angels, by contrast, expanded influence quietly. Isolation became the most dangerous weapon of all. The decision nobody wanted to make. Facing mounting losses and strategic isolation, the Blue Angels reached a breaking point. Continue fighting and face annihilation, or surrender identity to survive. This is where outlaw pride collides with reality. The patch over, identity erased, lives saved. The Blue Angels agreed to patch over to the Hells Angels. Their name vanished. Their colors disappeared. Their history ended. But their members lived on, under a new banner. This was not surrender. It was absorption. California is decided. With the Blue Angels absorbed, the Hells Angels emerged as the uncontested power in California. Territory stabilized. Resistance collapsed. For the first time, one patch ruled. Law enforcement faces a new reality. Authorities now confronted a unified organization, more disciplined, more organized, and more dangerous. The patchover solved a war. It created an empire. The blueprint goes global. What worked in California became a model. Patchovers replaced endless wars. Absorption replaced annihilation. The Hells Angels used this strategy across the United States and internationally. Myth, memory, and respect. Within biker culture, the Blue Angels are remembered not as losers, but as survivors. The Hells Angels are remembered as architects. Why this war mattered? This conflict changed outlaw culture forever. It proved that dominance could be built, not just fought. It proved that survival sometimes required sacrifice. The war that made an empire. California didn't fall in a single night. It was decided mile by mile, fight by fight, until only one patch remained. Final line. Once California was won, the world was next. The role of fear. How reputation became a weapon. Long before federal indictments and task forces, fear was the primary currency of outlaw biker culture. The Blue Angels had mastered this currency early. Stories of retaliation traveled faster than motorcycles. Clubs adjusted behavior based on rumor alone. The Hells Angels studied this. They understood that fear didn't have to be loud, it only had to be consistent. Where the Blue Angels relied on reputation earned in the past, the Angels cultivated fear in real time, reinforcing it through coordinated action. This psychological shift quietly tilted the war. Clubhouses, territory, and symbolic ground. Clubhouses weren't just meeting places. They were declarations of ownership. A clubhouse planted in contested territory was a provocation. As tensions rose, both clubs understood that attacking or defending these locations carried symbolic weight. A damaged clubhouse sent a message far beyond physical loss. For the Blue Angels, defending territory meant stretching manpower thin. For the Hells Angels, it meant forcing confrontation on their terms. Internal pressure and fracturing loyalties. Wars don't just test enemies, they test brotherhood. As casualties mounted, internal divisions began to surface inside the Blue Angels. Some members questioned leadership decisions. Others feared the long-term survival of the club. Younger members faced a future defined by endless retaliation. The Hells Angels monitored this closely, understanding that internal doubt could achieve what violence could not. The unseen negotiations. Contrary to popular belief, the path to the patchover was not a single meeting or ultimatum. It unfolded through indirect communication, intermediaries, and back-channel conversations. These discussions were not about pride. They were about survival. They weighed history against inevitability. By the time the decision became public, the outcome had already been decided privately. The patchover process, what it really meant. Patching over was not ceremonial theater. It was a controlled transition. Colors were surrendered. Insignia destroyed. Allegiance rewritten. Former Blue Angels underwent scrutiny. Loyalty had to be proven again. The process erased one identity and forged another, under strict conditions. Law enforcement reassessment. Authorities initially believed the end of the conflict would reduce violence. Instead, they faced a more disciplined organization with fewer internal conflicts. The patchover simplified command structures and reduced unpredictable outbreaks, but increased long-term criminal capacity. Investigators realized too late that peace on the streets didn't mean safety. Media, myth, and misunderstanding. Mainstream media reduced the conflict to sensational headlines, missing its deeper implications. What looked like the end of a biker war was actually the beginning of organizational dominance. The true story unfolded quietly, away from cameras. The cultural impact on outlaw MCs. Other clubs studied the outcome carefully. The lesson was clear: fragmentation leads to extinction. Patchovers became more common. Wars became shorter, or avoided entirely. The Blue Angels, Hells Angels conflict became a case study. Why resistance faded? Opposition to the Hells Angels didn't disappear overnight. It eroded. Without a comparable rival, resistance lacked coordination. Individual clubs understood the cost of defiance. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club is one of the most famous groups and easily the largest motorcycle club in the world, with a membership of over 6,467 chapters in 59 different countries. You might be wondering what makes this motorcycle club so special. Well, there are several reasons why anyone would want to join the Hells Angels. While a love of motorcycles is easily one of the most common motives, a sense of belonging, especially in an infamous club once shrouded in an aura of mystery and respect, is another. From a distance, the Hells Angels seem so cool, and it's easy for many to be enticed into wanting to join. However, joining this club isn't for the faint-hearted. Since many do not make the cut, becoming a full member of the Hells Angels can take a really long time, sometimes spanning years. To become a member of the Hells Angels, candidates are first expected to be true motorcycle enthusiasts. They must also own a valid driver's license and a motorcycle of over 750 cubic centimeters, as the average member is expected to ride at least 20,000 kilometers a year in strict formation. Candidates are also required to drive US-built motorcycles, with Harley-Davidson, Indian, and Victory being the most common brands. Prospective members who have applied to be law enforcement officers, such as prison guards or police, are excluded from the club. Child molesters are also not allowed. The initiation process starts with the candidate passing the above criteria. Once that is out of the way, the candidate, now considered a prospective member, enters the stage of being deemed a hang-around. As a hang-around, prospective members are invited to meet older club members at some club meetings, and this stage could last for a long time. If the hang-around still shows interest at this stage, they are then deemed an associate. They remain classified this way for a year or two. After these years pass, an associate is reclassified as a prospect and is now allowed to fully participate in some of the club's activities. However, they do not have voting privileges since the initiation process is still underway. If the prospect proves they have what it takes, they are then upgraded to full membership or full patch, which is the last phase of the initiation process. The full patch refers to the club's four-piece insignia given to its members. This includes the Death Head logo, two rockers, a top rocker with the words Hells Angels, and a bottom rocker showing the country, state, or charter location. Rectangular MC patch beneath the wings of the Death Head signifies Motorcycle Club. Prospects are only allowed to wear the bottom rocker along with the MC patch. The final stage of becoming a full member begins with the voting process. A prospect can only become a full member or full patch when they are unanimously voted in by all full members of the club. Hence, a prospect is often required to travel across chapters in their country and introduce themselves to other members. Voting becomes easier once these members have gotten to know the prospect and have vetted them. The prospect must receive 100% of the votes, as a single vote against them means the prospecting stage continues until they are fully voted in. Once they have been voted in, prospects are required to reaffirm their loyalty to the club, and the Hells Angels rocker is finally awarded to them as the final part of the initiation ceremony. At this stage, known as being patched, prospects become full members. Full members of the Hells Angels are recognized by their infamous insignia, the full patch, but this remains the property of the club, not the member, even after the initiation process. The club's official colors are red lettering on a white background, leading to the nickname, the Red and White. Members wear their patches on leather or denim jackets and vests. Some members wear an AFFA patch, meaning Angels Forever, Forever Angels, indicating lifelong membership. Another patch consists of two Nazi-style SS lightning bolts beneath the words, Filthy Few, worn by select members. According to the club, this patch is a type of merit badge awarded to members who are first to arrive at and last to leave a party. However, some law enforcement officers allege that this patch is worn by members who have committed or are willing to commit murder on behalf of the club. In some cases, members may wear patches that signify their rank within the organization. These small, rectangular patches display the titles of the members in red letters on a white background. Common titles include President, Sergeant-at-Arms, Treasurer, Vice President, and more. If a member is ejected from the club or chooses to leave, they are required to return their patches to the club. Members are expected to pay dues that finance burials and motorcycle runs. Attendance at club meetings and motorcycle runs is also mandatory. Contrary to popular belief, most Hells Angels members are not drug addicts. The club prohibits intravenous drug use, and many members are known to be fitness enthusiasts. According to J. Dobbins, an investigative agent who went undercover and infiltrated the Hells Angels from 2001 to 2003, the club has strict rules concerning interactions with women. Wives or girlfriends of members are strictly off-limits, and violations of this rule are met with severe, often violent, consequences. Dobbins also mentioned that members are not allowed to speak to one another while wearing sunglasses. Additionally, members must remove their riding gloves before shaking hands. Prospects are forbidden from patting a member's back or touching the Hells Angels patch, with severe consequences for breaking this rule. Those who leave the club on bad terms have all possessions related to the club taken away from them, including the removal of tattoos that indicate club affiliation. Prospects, along with members' girlfriends and wives, are allowed to wear the number 81, which stands for Support 81, with 8 representing H and 1 representing. The Hells Angels do not have an overall president. Instead, the club is governed by regional officers representing localized chapters at monthly meetings. These chapters have a degree of autonomy regarding minor policy changes and member discipline. Rankings in the club's organization include President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, Sergeant-at-Arms, and Road Captain, each carrying out significant duties. Responsibilities within their chapters vary, and regional officers are divided into two groups. The first group comprises those who attend the West Coast Officers Meeting, also known as WESCOM. The Westcom group is charged with conducting the policy actions and affairs of the Hells Angels chapters in the western United States. The second group includes those who attend the East Coast Officers Meeting, or ECOM, which governs the chapters in the eastern United States. Although the Hells Angels founding location was in San Bernardino, California, its unofficial founding location eventually moved to Oakland, California, under the leadership of Sonny Barger, who succeeded Otto Friedli as the de facto national president. This shift made the Oakland chapter one of the most prominent and regarded as first among equals, due to Barger's reputation. The Oakland chapter has the largest membership of any chapter in the United States and is responsible for major decision-making within the club. Any other motorcycle club wishing to be affiliated with the Hells Angels must first apply to the Oakland chapter for membership and be monitored and approved by them before being granted membership. The Hells Angels' traditional motto is Angels Forever, Forever Angels. They also have other slogans such as, When we do right, nobody remembers. When we do wrong, nobody forgets. 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead. and when in doubt, knock them out, the latter coined by New York City chapter member Vincent "Big Vinny" Girolamo. Joining the Hells Angels is far from easy. Prospective members often spend years on a wait list and devote their remaining years as full members to the club. The Hells Angels are not a casual, recreational group. For many members, joining is one of the best experiences of their lives, but leaving the club is a different matter altogether. Members can only leave if they are expelled, as there is no concept of retirement, except in rare cases where certain members are allowed to depart. Still, some have taken the daring step to leave. One notable example is George Christie. "I felt we became the people we rebelled against, and that's exactly what I told them at the meeting when I left," Christie said. "At one time, we would interact with all the clubs up and down the coast, and by 2011 we were fighting every major outlaw bike club in the United States, plus law enforcement. That's where some people lost perspective of what the initial intent was of the whole outlaw lifestyle. It seemed more military, like an army fighting another army." Christie was a Hells Angels leader for 35 years out of a 40-year membership. He was drawn to the outlaw biker lifestyle as a kid in the mid-1950s when he first saw a long-haired, denim-jacketed biker riding through the streets without a care in the world. Christie described that moment as life-changing. What truly fueled his interest, however, was an incident during high school when his principal accused him of cheating because he scored highly on an IQ test. Christie, who did poorly in school, thought, "If this is a polite society, no thank you," as he left the principal's office. After high school, Christie joined the Marine Corps. When he was discharged, he bought a motorcycle and started hanging out with other biker groups, such as the Satan Slaves and Question Marks, though his ultimate dream was to join the Hells Angels. By 1976, Christie had become a full-patch member, and soon after, he rose in rank, founding the Ventura, California chapter in 1978 and even carrying the Olympic torch during the 1984 Los Angeles Games. Despite being a high-ranking member, Christie also worked for the Department of Defense. In 1978, his co-workers discovered he was a Hells Angels leader, a fact that came to light during a brutal conflict with a rival group involving fights, shootings, and bombings, which led to his resignation. Trouble followed Christie. He was later charged with orchestrating a murder-for-hire plot involving a leader of the Mexican mafia prison gang. While in prison, Christie learned that rival clubs did not fight each other behind bars, which motivated him to push for peace on the streets. By the time he was acquitted in 1987, Christie had already started negotiating peace between rival motorcycle clubs. His efforts seemed successful until the 2002 Laughlin River Run, an annual motorcycle rally in Nevada, where a brawl between the Mongols and Hells Angels left 3 people dead. By 2011, the Hells Angels were embroiled in conflicts with nearly every major outlaw motorcycle club and law enforcement. Christie wanted the wars to end, but others did not share his vision. "I felt that groups were fracturing off, doing their own thing, if you will. It was tough," he said. "I decided that if I stayed in the club, it would strictly be ego-driven. I didn't want to be the guy who used to be a Hells Angels leader." In 2011, Christie made his decision to leave. He walked into a club meeting, announced his departure, removed his patches, and laid them on the table. His final words to his former club members were, "We have become the people that we rebelled against. And I'm gone." While Christie argued that he followed protocols and formally quit the club, it appeared that attempting to leave was a mistake. He was soon accused of being an informant, and his status was changed to out bad, meaning he was no longer in good standing with the Hells Angels and could not have any relations or contact with other members. In essence, he had been excommunicated from the club. Christie claimed he was shamed on social media and faced accusations from people, including strangers. The sense of kinship and community that had initially spurred Christie to join the outlaw biker lifestyle was stripped from him simply because he chose to leave. In an interview, Christie was asked why being out bad still seemed to bother him. His response was, "Being out bad with no contact in the outlaw motorcycle world is like a stigma. They don't want people interacting with you. They don't want people talking to you. Club members who I was friendly with after I left had their memberships in jeopardy if they communicated with me." He continued, When I left, it kind of reminded me of a divorce. At first, everyone wanted to be amiable. They weren't happy about my decision, but they understood it. As things progressed, it became aggressive, and it was hard to take. The phone rings, and you pick up, and it's one of your former brothers telling you you're no longer a friend to us. That's my whole life because I didn't have many friends outside the club. It was a hard pill to swallow. George Christie wasn't the only one to suffer this tragic fate after leaving the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. My name is Jay Dobbins. I'm a retired undercover federal agent and I infiltrated the Hells Angels, said Jay Dobbins, who infiltrated the Hells Angels between 2001 and 2003. Dobbins, a former football player and athlete, decided to join the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, ATF, after surviving a critical shooting during an operation in 1987. By 2002, when the war between the Hells Angels and the Mongols was at its peak, federal law enforcement launched an undercover operation called Operation Black Biscuit. Dobbins, posing as a gun runner and debt collector, went by the name Jay Davis, and was known to gang members as Jaybird. Dobbins staged a fake murder to gain the Hells Angels' trust. A law enforcement officer posed as a Mongols biker, covered in lamb blood and brains, and was laid in a shallow grave for photographs and videos. Dobbins mailed a blood-stained Mongols patch to the Hells Angels, impressing the leadership so much that they immediately voted him as a fully patched member of the Mesa, Arizona charter, although they later denied this. Unfortunately, as Dobbins moved up the ranks, the lifestyle began to strain his family life. I had an argument with my wife. At one point, I came home after being away for an extended period. I walked in like Jaybird Davis walks into my house, and she's like, "You cannot be gone and come here and treat me and our kids like we're street people." Despite acknowledging that the Hells Angels could be dangerous, Dobbins admitted to respecting some members. After his true identity was revealed in 2004, the Hells Angels felt betrayed and directed their threats at his family. Plans to inject him with HIV, gang rape his wife and daughter, and kidnap and murder his son were uncovered. The ATF downplayed the threats, claiming no one had forced Dobbins to go undercover. Even when an arson attack occurred at his Tucson, Arizona home with his family inside, the Bureau didn't take the threat seriously. Though his family survived, their home and belongings were destroyed. Dobbins filed and won a lawsuit against the ATF in 2014. He later wrote a book, No Angel, My Harrowing Undercover Journey to the Inner Circle of the Hells Angels, which became a New York Times bestseller. The book detailed the Hells Angels' investigation and its impact on his career and life. Despite the tragic events following his departure, Dobbins now runs a company focused on law enforcement training. Finally, there is the case of David LaBrava. Unlike others who faced hardship after leaving the Hells Angels, LaBrava left in good standing. Known for his role as Happy Loman in the FX series Sons of Anarchy, LaBrava was a real-life member of the Hells Angels. Initially hired as a technical advisor for the show in 2008 to ensure accurate depictions of a motorcycle club, he was later given a role and portrayed the hitman Happy Loman. LaBrava stayed with the Hells Angels until 2019, when he announced his departure via an Instagram post. "I want to say I am no longer a member of the largest motorcycle club in the world, the Hells Angels MC. The only club I'm a member of now is the human race," he wrote. He added that it was his own decision to leave and that he was no longer a patch holder, considering himself a civilian. Unlike others, LaBrava's exit was amicable, and he has had no negative experiences with the club since.